Hey guys, hope you're having a pretty good weekend. Anyway, I've been trying to make this video basically explaining levels. I think it's probably the easiest way to try out there, and it's also the most reliable one. Um, it basically kind of help you to identify what is your main support and your main resistance. The idea of this video is basically explain it the simplest way you guys can start testing it out there and try to basically accomplish what I had. Levels is the most used indicator that I have, and I think like I said before, it's probably the simplest way to start trading. All right, so what is levels? For me, basically levels are resistance and support on the stock. How to identify those levels. The way that I do it is that I basically put the main support where we get the most rejections. Like an example, this one over here, those basically 20s. If you see over here, we basically have one candle, two candles, three and four candles basically touching and bouncing from there. The harder bounce that we have, the strongest the level it is. And like I said before, we kind of like develop a pretty good support. The most candles that we get in a level, that means that the support is actually stronger or the resistance is actually stronger. Let's take a look at how to identify a support basically. Like I said before, support is basically where the candle usually bounces from. If we look closely over here, we basically have those 20s. If we draw a line on it, you can see that we have this candle basically bouncing from it. It's a pretty strong bounce, and then we have this candle also bouncing from it, which is also a pretty good bounce. If we go a little more to the previous levels or time frame, you can see that we also have a lot of rejections and also a lot of bouncing from there. Like I said before, the harder it bounces from there, is basically the stronger the level is, and also the most candles that we have basically bouncing from it, also the strongest that it is. One thing about support and resistance is that whenever we actually um, break out from a resistance, that resistance tends to become a support. Uh, Also, the other way around, whenever we actually break a support, that support tends to be the new resistance. You can also see it here. Those 20s were actually the pretty good support, and whenever we actually ended up actually dropping from it, it basically became that resistant. You can see here that we had a lot of candles basically getting rejected at that level. Again, the more candles that we had rejecting that level, the harder it's going to be the breakout from that resistance, and the more candles that we have basically bouncing from that support, the harder it's actually going to drop whenever we break that support. If you see over here, again with those 20s, we were getting a lot of uh, rejections on that level, and once that we broke out from it, ended up actually running pretty strong. Basically went from 20 all the way to 2023. Same thing happens when we broke down. You can see here that whenever we lost those 20s, ended up dropping all the way to 1980. So keep in mind that the most candles that we have passing at a level, that's gonna be the hardest that we actually is gonna run whenever we actually break out from it. All right, so how to identify levels? The way that I do it, I mostly trade on the hourly. You see over here. Um, so the way that I do is to draw basically a support. I tend to go with the bottom of the candle. All right, so in this case, it's gonna be this level over here, those 1981. We basically have a lot of candles holding that level and bouncing from there. And if you go a little more to the back, we're also gonna see way more candles also bouncing from there. So that tells me that there is also a pretty good support at those 1981. Again, the most candles that you have passing by or bouncing or rejecting that level, the harder it's gonna be. If you see over here, we have this section over here, we have this section over here, and we have basically this one over here, which is basically a pretty strong rejection. Hence the rejection of those 1980s and closing that candle at 1963. So that's a pretty strong level to watch. If we break down from here, again, this is gonna transform and the next resistance to break in case that we actually bounce back. Alright, so once that we have this level, the next one is gonna be basically identifying that resistance to go to the upside. We take another line and we drop it at the top of the candle that is closer to that level that we're looking for as a support. If you see over here, the next resistance is gonna be basically 1987. We have a lot of candles basically bouncing from there. We also have a lot of candles basically rejecting that level. So that seems to be a pretty good level to watch. Remember, like I said before, if we break up from those 1987, that is gonna become our support. Hence, we see that bounce to the upside. And if the same thing happened with this one, with those 1979, that's basically gonna become our resistance to go up. All right. So now that we have draw those 1987, which is basically our resistance to go up, the next step is gonna be basically drawing the next level. In this case over here, the next one is gonna be those 1994, which is basically the top of this candle. That's basically what we got rejected before. If you see, there's a lot of candles passing by at that level. We basically have this candle over here, these two over here, these two over here, this one over here, and this one. The more candles that we have, the harder is the level. I can stop saying that because some people go with only one candle, and that's kind of like become a pretty weak support resistance. And if you use it as your stop loss, you ended up actually getting jump over that level and ended up actually missing your exit point. Anyway, now we have those 1994. The next level that is gonna follow is gonna be basically those 20s, which is basically this level over here. You see over here, we have a lot of candles actually getting rejections at our level. Let me draw it. This one over here. You can see that we basically have 1, 2, 3. We also have a candle bouncing from there. This level over here. So that's actually a pretty good resistance or support in case that we break to the upside. One of the rules that I have is that whole numbers tends to be a pretty good psychological level. This is one of the main reasons that Snap basically closed at 11. This is one of the main reasons that we see a lot of rejections at 20 on SPY. That's another reason that we see a lot of rejections at SPY 400, SPY 410, SPY 415. So whole numbers tends to be a pretty good level to watch. If we actually sometimes we actually close an example on Snap around 1094, 1095. I'm gonna put my next resistance to go to the upside at 11. I think that was the way that we trade this Friday. If you see over here, we actually ended up actually breaking those 11 and reverse back down and bounce from there. You can see basically the candle. So whole numbers, it's a pretty good level to watch. If you see, we have basically 11 over here. We have this candle bouncing from there. We have 3, 4 candles also using as a support. So that's a pretty good level to keep in mind. I think I applied that rule almost in every single stock, and so far I've been doing extremely good with that rule. Let's see if we can actually find 10. It's this one over here. If you see over here, basically have a candle bouncing from those 10s. This one over here, then we have this one over here, then we have this one over here, and this one over here. So you can see basically the whole numbers is actually a pretty good support or resistance regarding levels. Again, how to draw the levels. Let's use a snap as an example for tomorrow. Right now we close basically at 11, so the next level that I'm gonna be looking at is gonna be basically 11, 12. If you see over here, we also have a lot of candles actually getting rejected there. We have this one, we have this one, we also have this one actually bouncing from there once it became actually a support, and now we have this one also bouncing from there once it actually became a support. So there's a lot of candles actually bouncing from there or getting rejection there. So it's actually a pretty good, pretty strong level to watch. So we keep going up. The next one we're gonna see basically is gonna be 11, 19, which is this one over here. We have two candles actually getting rejected there. We also have another candle actually bouncing from there. We have these two candles basically bouncing from there. So that's another one. That's another pretty good level to watch. So 11, 18 is gonna be my next level, and after that, I'm probably gonna go with those 11, 22. There's only two candles passing by at that level, but that doesn't mean that we can get a rejection there. Actually, three candles. We basically have these two over here, and we have this one over here. So 11, 22 is gonna be our next resistance to the upside. All right, so now let's go back for support. Let's take a look at the next level on support. We basically have this little candle over here. We have this one over here. So I think the next level to look at for support is gonna be 1095. We have this one, we have this one, we have this one too, and we have a lot of candles here getting either a rejection or using as a support at that level. So those 1095 is gonna be my main trigger for a downside move if we actually ended up actually breaking to the downside. Under that, the next level I'm gonna be looking at is gonna be basically 1087. If you see over here, we basically have 1, 2, 3 candles actually using it as a support or resistance. So that's also another good. It's not so strong as the other one. We see a lot of candles passing by, but it's actually a pretty good. My rule is that more than 3 candles is actually a good strong support or resistance. So under those 1086, we're gonna go to 1080. And this one seems to be a really good support since we have a pretty strong bounce from there, which is this candle over here, and also another pretty good bounce from there with this candle over here. So right now we have our levels draw for Monday. We basically have 11, 12 for calls. After that we have 11, 18, and then 11, 22. And then for puts, which is basically a break to the downside, I'm be looking at 1095, which is this one over here, 1086, and 1079. All right, that's the way that I use levels. Let's draw another one. Let's go with with AT&T, and let's draw the puts on this one. We already did the calls, which is basically 1987, which is this level over here. After that, we have 1994, which is basically this level over here, and then we have 20, which is, like I said before, whole number, so it tends to be a pretty good support slash resistance. All right, so for puts, 1979 is going to be my main level to watch. We have a lot of candles actually bouncing or holding there. We basically have this section over here. We basically have another section over here. So that's actually a pretty good, really good support. Again, the most candles that we have passing by at level, the stronger that it is. If we ended up actually breaking down from there, the movement is actually going to be harder or longer compared to previous levels that hold basically less candles. So what's the next level on this one? 1968, which is this one over here. We go back and see if we can actually see more candles bouncing or rejection there, but so far not so many. I think it's only this one over here and this one over here. So we have 4 candles actually. So it's not bad. It's actually a pretty good support. So under that, we're gonna have a gap, right? We had this gap over here, which is basically where we got rejected. It's a gap between 1969 and 1964. But then we see that in 1963, 1964, we had a lot of rejection. So that seems to be a pretty good support too. Hence the rule that whenever we actually break the resistance, it becomes support, or whenever we break the support, it becomes resistance. So this seems to be a pretty good support also, which is basically 1963. So there you go. We have basically our levels. We have 1987 for calls, 1979 for puts. That's literally the way that I use levels. Regarding taking profits or putting your stop loss, the way that I do it is basically, like I said before, whenever we break a resistance, that becomes support, right? And whenever we actually break a support, that becomes resistance. So if I'm in calls right now, my trigger for calls is going to be basically 1987. Breaking out from there, it's going to go to 1984. So whenever we break from those 1987, that's going to become our support. So that in the ideal case, that'll be our stop loss. If you want to feel a little more risky, you can extend your stop loss to the previous support, which is basically 1979. If you see over here, those 1979, like I said before, has a lot of candles passing by, so it's actually a pretty good support. I think if we break from there, the drop is going to be harder. So this is an essential place to look at if you're actually holding calls. So to go into calls, you're going to wait for those 1987 triggers. To exit, you can either use those 1987s as your exit point or stop loss, or 1979, which is basically a stronger support. To take profits out, the way that I do is I actually go by levels too. You can you go in at those 1987. Whenever you're approaching those 1994, you start actually taking profits out, because there's a possibility of getting a rejection at that level. If you break that resistance, which is basically 1994, the next level is going to be 2001. So what you need to do is basically take out more profits between those two levels, because again, there might be a possibility of getting a rejection at those 20. What you have to do also is start moving your stop loss level up. So 1987 is going to be your first stop loss. If you break those 1994, that's going to be your new stop loss, and your secondary stop loss is going to be 1987. If you break 20, that's going to be basically your new stop loss. Your secondary stop loss is going to be 1994, and the last one 1987. But I usually try to get out with only two stop losses. I don't actually wait to go back to my original entry. The idea is to take profits whenever we start breaking levels to the upside or to the downside. Anyway, the assignment for you guys is basically going to be to test it and try it. I was thinking about if you guys want to draw some levels and send them to me on Discord. I can actually review those and see if you guys are doing it good. It's a simple rule. It's a simple way to trade, but I think it's probably the most accurate one out there, because in this case we're basically using support and resistance. I hope you guys understand it, and I'm gonna put it on YouTube in case you guys want to see it more time, or want to actually go over a little more time. Anyway, if you have any questions, you can actually get in touch with me on Discord, and if you need help, you can always send me a message through Discord too. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this is actually pretty good for you guys.